Hello. This is Christian Parker. I'm going to talk about Season 4, Episode 4 of Better Call Saul. I'm back at my college now, so this is a slightly different recording setup. It might sound different, I don't know. And similarly, because I'm back at school and I have a bunch of work to do now, this one's going to be short. I'm going to make this one quick. This was kind of a controversial episode, maybe the most out of any episode, more so than any episode that's been released thus far. Certainly got mixed reviews among those audience members that I talked to. I don't know if you watched the Better Call Keno Mumkey Jones podcast. They didn't like it. We'll get to what I thought of it. Actually, on IMDb.com it still has a good rating, but I'm gonna look up the AV Club review right now because the author of those, Donna Bowman, generally she gives fair responses to them. Is this it? Yeah. Oh, she gave it an A-. It's kind of surprising. A lot of people didn't like it, and in my opinion, for fair reason. This episode is the quintessence of why people call this show slow, or why on the 4chan TV threads about it they say it's literally nothing happens, the show. That is all made extremely, that's justified, those accusations, by episodes like this. It was very slow, even by this show's standards. I remember the episode that I was most lukewarm in my personal reception of it at the time. The only episode comparable to this one in terms of how much I kind of disliked it was Switch, the first episode of Season 2. And similarly to this episode, I thought that one kind of accomplished nothing. It's not that nothing happened in Switch, it's just that it amounted to nothing. Because at the end of Season 1, the previous episode, Jimmy goes off and he implies he's going to become a criminal lawyer. But then in Season 2, he goes and decides to just take the Davis and Maine job anyway. It's for Kim, of course, not for himself, really. Or at least he wants to believe that's what he wants, but deep down he knows it's not. Sorry, I took a drink of water there. It's warm in this room. So it seems to that switch kind of backtracked on the plot. This one doesn't do that. It more just stagnates entirely. Almost entirely. Jimmy's doing nothing. It's kind of introduced why and how he decides to use, what are they called? Multiple individual cell phones for various clients. There's a certain kind of phone, like a name for that, using a throwaway phone like that. I can't remember it. Anyway, so you got that, but that's hardly a plot point, really. That's a pretty sorry excuse for a plot point introduced into Jimmy's storyline throughout one entire episode, and that's all that the episode amounted to for him. I would have thought I thought there were definite redeeming elements to this episode, or moments where it had a lot of potential, during some of which the potential was ultimately lost. And this was one of them where it was ultimately lost. I thought when Jimmy lied to Kim about having a job lined up, I thought it would have been a much better narrative decision for him to just go immediately back to his scams and not actually go and say, take the cell phone store job. I thought it would have been a lot better if he had not, if he had essentially... Because he essentially tells a white lie to her, because he goes immediately, takes the job, says that he had second thoughts, that he wants to take the job again. If he hadn't, and just had gone back to his scamming ways from the third episode of the season, I've used the phrase twisting the knife a lot so far during this podcast. It would have been doing that again. It would have been, heightening the tension and between Kim and Jimmy. Would have been tightening the noose on their relationship, so to speak. So, but he didn't do that. He you know, what I'm getting at is they need to be keeping secrets from each other right now, but they're kind of they're going halfway on that. They're kind of lying to each other a bit, but ultimately not for too long or about anything too significant. And so ultimately Jimmy is just kind of bored in a cell phone store for the whole episode. And I thought at the end there, when he was painting the words on the windows, I thought he was painting something about Saul Goodman, because they do that sometimes. They give you a little, they trick you a little bit. And because they were showing the close-ups of the letters, and they were only letters that can be found in the name Saul Goodman. And I was like, oh, it's also the yellow and red colors, so that's what they're gonna do. Out of nowhere. Wouldn't have really made too much sense, but, so that's, it's a good thing ultimately that they didn't do it, but whatever. Still, little to no plot development for Jimmy. Still a joy to watch him on screen and whatever. He's a great actor, Bob Odenkirk, but Jimmy stagnated more than almost anyone in this episode, probably more than anyone at all. But Kim really didn't do too much herself. It was a good, again, having her go back to the courthouse and just observe or just look for new jobs, new kinds of clients. I thought potentially she was actually doing that for Jimmy's sake, seeing if Jimmy could take his job back there or just do work at the courthouse again, because she's starting to sense that that's what he needs. But then again, she's feeling overwhelmed with Mesa Verde, doesn't want it anymore really, so she's probably also, more likely she is just looking for herself, for other opportunities. And that is, I guess, that I'm not even gonna make any kind of deliberation about whether that's a good direction for the plot to go in or not. I think it's fine, and I trust the writers that they'll do a good job with whatever they choose. One mediocre episode doesn't change that, but it's still just having her look for work again in new places. And even that much not being entirely clear, that is not enough to sustain her C plot in this episode. Her plot, which is the C or D plot. And so, sorry, I'm going to take another swig. So, her too, same thing. Who else we got? We got Nacho and we got Mike. I guess we got Gus in a sense too. Gus wasn't too prevalent in this one. Only at the end. Nacho, that we got closure on one unit of this season there, where it was clear these last 3 episodes now, it's clear that Gus was using Nacho to gain territory. Okay, good. It's good. That's what I thought. That's what I want. That's an interesting, captivating side of the story here. But we only just saw that play out, his acquisition of new territory, and that montage of the twins shoot, that was fun. It was, but it doesn't really hold a candle to the Hank twins shootout. It's nothing like that. So, it's kind of a spectacle and all that. And that's all it is. And as it relates to Nacho himself, again, he's being pressed from all sides. That's what I've been saying in these podcasts. And that's great. I just need to see it continue relentlessly. So, in terms of, among the different characters' plots, Nacho's in this episode was the one I guess I had the least problem with, or the fewest problems with, as it's just the natural conclusion of his current storyline. But again, we didn't open up anything new, except at the end. The end was definitely a part that brought the episode together, and I liked the ending. I think the ending, to some extent, to some degree, saved the episode, in that we see how Mike is catching on to what Gus is doing, and we might have some tension between Gus and Nacho, and Mike and Nacho, and obviously Gus and Mike. Now, there's also a degree of tension. So I see where the story is going there, and I'm glad it's going in that direction. Ultimately, I kind of want some kind of, I want Nacho to break away from Gus, and Gus to use Mike to either rein him back in, reel him back in, threaten him to stay, essentially, and use lethal force if necessary, because obviously Nacho could go and rat him out to the Salamancas and everything. Anyway, excuse me. Anyway, that whole plot is going in the direction I wanted to. At least that was clarified at the end of this episode. But as for Mike, his plot is also going somewhere new. He finally seems to he's becoming hardened, a more hardened criminal. He's obviously reaching his breaking point in that group therapy discussion scene. He kind of loses it on that guy. And that is what Mike's character has to do, because, his character development, his own progression as a character is moving from someone who isn't willing to pull the trigger, someone who wants to give these people whom he deems good deep down, or innocent, I should say, he wants to give them a chance to survive, whereas in Breaking Bad he's gonna just kill if that's what is asked of him. So that's where he's going. And here we see some kind of emotional development that is necessary, a necessary step on that journey. But my problem with this is that, to me, it seemed hardly motivated by the previous episodes and this episode. Why the fuck would this guy, who just happens to lie in group therapy, why would he get Mike's goat that much? It just didn't seem to add up. Unless there's something I'm missing, and that's just kind of a displacement thing, something, a manifestation of something else that Mike is angry about. In which case, maybe the reason I'm not picking up on that is because I'm watching these episodes week by week, of course, and if I were to just watch them all in quick succession, I would pick up on it. Regardless, to me, where, Mike's emotional progression or psychological progression isn't coming across too clearly in this one. Again, it's where he needs to go. I just hope that they will clarify it more in the future, retroactively, I guess. Yeah, honestly, that's all I guess I need to say. Definitely one of my least favorite episodes of the series. I was totally trying to convince myself while watching it that it was good. And honestly, narratively, the way that this episode, on a micro level, the way the episode was, shot, and, its temporal order, the sequence of scenes, and how within each scene, how things played out, that was all top-notch as usual. I was still captivated watching it, but I was just infuriated that nothing was actually coming of any of the events. So yeah, I guess I'm conflicted on this one. I give it I don't know, a 7 out of 10. And that's 7 being kind of on a scale where 5 is not average, but 7 is average, because it's like a C grade, whatever. And I've certainly never, other than maybe Switch, like I said, I don't think I've ever thought this badly of an episode before this series. I'm sure this is just a setup episode. Like I said before, I don't suddenly distrust the writers and the directors and all of them. I'm sure that this episode has a point, or it was a necessary, a necessary, I can't even think right now, I'm sorry. A necessary digression from plot development, whatever. From what I hear some rumor that on the Better Call Saul subreddit that the next episode, Quite a Ride, episode 5, is, back to the good stuff. So we can only hope that that's true. Hopefully I have not pissed off any fanboys who are even more fanboyish about this show than I am, because I'm almost never willing to say anything wholly bad about this show. I almost always find it really good. This one was mediocre. That's all I got to say.